Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the In Pursuit podcast. My name is Dion Garrett, and I'm your host. And this is a podcast for people who, like me, are in pursuit of more in life, a fuller life, a whole life. And today I have with me a good friend, a special guest. This is Patricia Coleman, CEO, leader, mother, so many things, and a friend to many, a powerhouse here in the St. Louis community. He's done a lot of good for a lot of years. So welcome, Pat.
Thank you. I am happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, I'm so glad to sit down with you. You and I, we got a chance to know each other. I served on a board of an organization that you were the CEO of, and we got introduced through mutual connection.
Yes.
And the first time I sat down with you, I was like, I was already on a board. I was busy here with my work, and I'm like, I do not need one more thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I sat down with you, and after a coffee for an hour, I thought, oh my goodness, I felt so called to support you in your leadership and also to learn from you. I was like, oh, this is someone who I can both support and learn a lot from. And that began our relationship, and here we are now.
I appreciate that. Sounds good.
Yeah. Hey, so today I'll tell all of our listeners and our viewers that today I want to dive into a topic that I've been wrestling with a lot, and I think the whole country's been wrestling with it over the last several years, but especially over the last year. And it's the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, and your
belonging.
Belonging is the other piece that you really introduced to me. And those have been through some policy changes, but today we're going to talk about those things not as policy as much as values.
Yes.
And so we're going to get there, but I want to back up for a minute, and I want to have you share just a little bit about your story. I was reading. I got the. This is so Pat wrote a book. She was a kind of chief editor, compiler of a book.
Yes, the publisher.
Yeah, tell us about Overcoming.
Okay, so Overcoming, Living Our Best Life in Spite of, it was 33 women, including myself. We each contributed a chapter to talk about trauma that we had experienced. Although it's for all women, all of us are Black women that have from different levels in life, different backgrounds, but we all had one thing in common, that we had experienced some type of trauma in our lives. And so Overcoming is about you either in the midst of overcoming it or you overcame it. And we wanted to discuss how we got there and how it would lead us further.
Yeah, so I read this when we first met a couple of years ago. I guess that was about 3 years ago now. And I reread your section yesterday, just preparing for this. And it was interesting to me as I was rereading this, because now that I know you better, and now that I'm reading this, I kind of remember that when I was first reading this, the impression that I might have had of you was, as you talk about some of the traumatic things that you've been through and the difficulty of being a young mom, raising two sons in a world that didn't always see your sons as equal humans full of potential, but kind of looked at them with suspicion sometimes, or treated them unfairly. And you talked about how difficult that was as a mother to watch your sons, be mistreated?
Yes.
And you talked about, how frustrated you, made you mad sometimes, and how you had to walk through that. Yes. And if you read that alone, you might get the impression that you're a woman who now walks around with a chip on your shoulder about life, but that's really not the kind of woman, the kind of leader that you are.
Not at all.
So how do you, and you talk a little bit about this in here, and I think that's part of the book, but how do you attribute, or to what do you attribute going through lots of hard things, unfairness, injustice, but not letting that make you an angry person as you move through the world, still being a very open-hearted, winsome kind of leader that you are?
Yes. It's my faith. It's my faith. It was the way that I was raised. Our parents taught us, take your eyes off yourself, put them on others, and you will be blessed. And so I learned very early on that I'm going to live in this world that may be unjust sometimes. But I didn't go through a portion of the things that my parents went through. And I watched them come on the other side. Both of my parents, they were just elementary educated. They self-taught themselves a lot of things, but they were great people. And they had the heart of them was their faith. And that just passed on to me. And so the times that when I get angry, I know for a fact this is the world that I live in. And as long as God has me here, I can't walk around with a chip on my shoulder, because there is more good people, I really do believe, than there are bad people or people that mistreat others. And as a mother, I wanted to be a model for my sons. It's hard for Black men just in general. And if they see me with a chip on my shoulder, then how will they be successful in their lives if that's the way that they had to live every day?
Yeah.
It takes too much energy for that. Not worth it.
Yeah, that sounds easier said than done, though.
It is.
Because, I mean, anger, and especially if it's a righteous kind of anger,
Yes.
if you're angry about something that really isn't right,
Yes.
but any kind of anger can be consuming.
Yes.
And
Yes. But I learned that not to sit in it. If you sit in that, then it's just hard to move forward. I want, and I'm pursuing a happy life. I pursue joy. And so I know that there are always going to be trials and tribulations. Even as I sit here, as long as I'm on this earth, there will be more trials and tribulations. I just have to learn how to deal with it. And it's my faith. I mean, it's just my faith. But I don't want people to take away from this that I'm not human. It was a lot of times I had to go to God. When my father passed on, you see I talk about being big girl.
Yeah.
I have to put on my big girl pants.
that was your nickname that your
Yes,
father gave you.
Daddy
Yeah.
gave me that nickname. And I started as I got older, I was like, okay, big girl, get it together now and do what you need to do. But that doesn't mean that in private that I didn't cry, or in private that I was just so furious and upset. But then that's when I knew to turn to the Lord to help me get through these things. Because again, as long as we're on this earth and we're living, we have to learn how to move forward toward things. And so try to get over it as quickly as possible. And that takes a lot of time to do. You may think that it's a short time for me, but no, I've probably dredged over it for days and nights and days and nights. But what I present myself to the world, and what I present myself to for my children, for my family, just in general, I just try to exhibit that we can not get over necessarily, but we can learn to deal with things as long as we know that we're not dealing with it by ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you said that about it's not just getting over things. 'Cause I think there's some people would say, and certainly if you've encountered trauma, that if you just kind of push things down or avoid or ignore, if you even ignore that anger and you stuff it down, or you try to get rid of it, that's not necessarily constructive.
It's not.
I think of anger as being a signaling emotion, and sometimes there is a kind of anger that says, hey, things are not as they should be and they need to change. And they got to figure out what to do with that. Just to sit in the anger and let it go destructive. Jesus says, in your anger, do not sin.
Yes.
So what's the difference between not letting your anger overpower you when it comes to issues like injustice?
Yes.
Let your anger consume you, and not just kind of sweeping it under the rug and acting like the world is fine and just, in denial. What's the difference? And how do you walk through that?
It's a balance. It's a balance. The balance is how you walk through it, having the balance of acknowledging it first and knowing that it's there, knowing that it is wrong, but trying to be present present for when you need to be present, because even with the anger, there are other things that are going on in life that may not be as important, but they're important as well. Because when you you may exhibit things, it could be at work, but I guarantee you, at the time that you're dealing with those type of things, even when it's when justice is not correct, there may be something else going on in your home, or you may be dealing with a sick family member, or you having some type of illness yourself.
Yeah.
So when you start thinking about being that whole person, you have to balance what you're going to deal with. And for me, that is my faith.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it hasn't been hard, and that doesn't mean that it's not hard now. Definitely with all of the things that are going on in the world, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being weaponized, I would say, that makes me angry.
Yeah.
It really makes me angry, but it's not going to stop me from doing the work that I need to do in order to try to make things better, or to help make things a better world to live in.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really that strikes me about you, Pat, is that I have, and maybe this is the wrong attribution, but I've seen the sense of anger of like the world's not yet what it can be motivate you to a lot of constructive action.
Yes.
So maybe this is a good time to get into your career path.
Yeah.
We were just talking about how you started in human resources.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. I started many years ago my own HR consulting because I wanted to help organizations and support organizations that were small. I believe in small businesses. And so when they couldn't afford an HR department or an HR person, I would just make sure that I come in and put together the basics of the things that they needed to run appropriately as an organization. And so that's how it really got started. I guess I've always had this thing for people, but it probably took me until I was about 40 years old to realize that the core of me is wanting to make things better. Whether it's people, systems, right?
Yeah.
I just like making things better. That's just the way that
and there it is for me. Like, I think that's part of the world's not what it should be.
Yeah.
I can be frustrated about it, and I can let that send me in a downward spiral.
Yes.
Or for you, you've taken this very constructive path to going, I can make things better. And certainly, as we'll get to the DEI discussion, certainly on that front, but
Yes.
also just on the, I can make people's businesses better. I can help them run better. I can help people's work be treated better at work. I can.
Yes.
So you've had this very constructive path of improvement, which is I think something we share. That's like a big driver for me
It's
of just
just a
going, I want to
driver.
make the world better.
I just want to make things better just in general as well. So I know that even just getting in human resources or having my own business, it took a minute to realize it, but I realized a calling on my life. That's another thing. When you realize that you have this calling on your life, it doesn't allow you to just sit in anger all the time. What's the point? I know what I'm being called to do.
Yeah. So this landed you eventually with an organization,
Yes.
BHR, Behavioral Health Response.
Yes.
And they brought you on board to start with HR?
I had a consulting HR consulting contract with them.
Okay.
And although my business was doing pretty well, I had a pretty significant contract with the National Minorities AIDS Council. And so I traveled around quite a bit. And I remember the CEO at the time said, Pat, I want you to come and work for us full time. We're going to be growing. And immediately, being an entrepreneur, I'm thinking in the back of my head, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not coming to work for you full time. But as God would have it, it just started to the timing. Another thing, everything is about timing. My mother started to get a little bit more ill, and all of that travel that I was doing, I needed to slow that down a little bit. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll go and accept this position with BHR and still have partial my business on the side. But as God would have it, I started off as an HR manager and just worked my way through the organizations from HR manager to director to vice president of HR and then vice president of operations. Kind of started not doing my business on the side because that vice president of operations really, although it took a lot of time, it was what I really enjoyed, like touching on all of the pieces of the organization through a people's first point of view, right? And from that, the chief operating officer, and then I succeeded the CEO in 2012.
Yeah. But maybe it's a good time to really dive into this DEI thing. And I say thing because it's become such a, what I hope today can bring is that at the foundation, when we talk about things like diversity or equity, that things should be fair, or that inclusive environments where everyone feels welcome. One of the things we say here at Pathfinder is one of our first pillars is we're a place of unconditional acceptance, that everyone belongs here.
That's right.
There's no one who doesn't belong here.
Yes.
And so, and I think most people nod along with that. They're like, yeah, that sounds right, especially for a church, but that sounds right for people, that we should be inclusive. And I don't know if this is exclusive to you, but you really emphasized at BHR belonging also, that you can have equity and inclusion, but unless someone really feels a sense of belonging.
There it is.
Yeah, say more about that, the belonging piece.
That's why, belonging, I always say that's my jam right there, because you can include me. I've been included in quite a few spaces, but that doesn't mean that I feel as if I belong. When you start to feel you belong, that's it. That's more than, it becomes more than the talk. Because if I really feel like I belong, I know that you have really for real invited me to the table, that, you see me, that you value me, that you hear me. And so that belonging piece is really crucial. And I believe that organizations is something that that we should really work on, that we should make sure that we focus on, because we live in a diverse world. The great thing is that God intentionally made all of us different. That was an intentional thing.
That's right.
And so we can't really ignore it. And so having people from all these different backgrounds or wherever they come from, different characteristics, different abilities, different thoughts, having to bring all of that to the table, it can only make us more successful in our businesses, and definitely make us great in this world that's moving toward a more diverse population anyway. I mean, out
it's
here,
there, rather. Where we live in this part of St. Louis, it's been a majority white culture for a long time.
Yes.
But even as I drive down, I live 2 miles away from where we're sitting today, and even as I drive down the road, I see more diverse businesses that are in the area, that are different kinds of food, catering to different kinds of people groups, and I look around on the streets and see people walking, and I'm like, okay, there's some non-white faces around here, and you can see the culture changing a little bit. And I think if that's happening here in this part of St. Louis that has been
so true,
then it really is true. The world is quickly changing, and some of the boundary lines of where people used to be kept in different boundaries and countries, like all that's meshing. See, I think for me as a pastor, if I throw away all the, I keep bumping my microphone, if I throw away all the policy stuff, and I just say, all right, let's just talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging as values. Are these things that God wants for us? The answer is unequivocally yes. Like you said, we're created differently, and God does that on purpose.
Yes.
We see, Paul talks about in the New Testament, one of the writers of the New Testament, about the beautiful picture of the body of Christ, all these different parts. Not everyone has the same function, but together we come together and we do something more than what we could do as individuals, and we honor each other and the work that each part does. He goes on and says about ethnic things. He says in Christ there is no Jew or Greek or slave or free, that we're all one in Christ. But he acknowledges that Christ came to bring us all, to reconcile all of us into the family of God. In Revelation, we see a picture of what our destiny is going to look like, and it's people from every tribe and nation gathered around the throne. And and so it's like, okay, this is, if eternity is diverse, if if then that's a godly value that we
Yes,
should
it
aspire
is.
to. And there are a lot of reasons sociologically I think that we don't do that. It's uncomfortable, it's challenging. We'd like to be around people who think
Yes.
like us, and because it's just a little easier.
Yes.
Equity, I could go through the list. Equity, like God has a God of
Justice.
fairness and
That's
just and inclusion, belonging. That's a huge theme of the New Testament.
Yes.
And Paul again had to really fight against this two-class system of, well, you got the real Jews who are Jew by the bloodline, and then you've got these other people, these Greeks who are kind of coming into Jesus too.
Yes.
And who's better?
Yes.
And he's like, no. Like there's this beauty in both the Jewishness that comes into
Yes.
comes to Christ and the Gentile or the Greek, and all of you equally belong, and we have to cultivate a church where we all belong. So anyway,
So yeah, Jesus exhibited that. But at the same time, again, when you do talk about diversity, I know that I have faith. That's the core for me. But then I also know that I'm in a world where everybody doesn't.
yeah,
So I have to accept that as well. And all I can do is be me, be who I am, push what I can push. And it may be accepted and it may not be accepted. But I know that what I am trying to do in order to make things better. And how I got into the diversity space is that, when I left BHR, I definitely wanted to get involved in something where I felt I could make an impact. That's what I really wanted my second, maybe third, I don't know where I was at, chapter to be. But
Yeah,
let's
what
just
chapter
say
do you
it was the next chapter, right? For me, and I wanted to make an impact.
Yeah.
Right. But that's me wanting to make the impact. And if I'm being given the opportunity to make the impact. And so trying to make that impact just in this world is challenging because everybody is not where you're at.
yeah.
And so it becomes a challenge. But, it'll never stop me. I'm going to continue to trudge and move forward with what I do believe about that. And now that I have Pat Coleman LLC, I have control over that. And
Yeah.
so,
That's good.
I have control over that. And so that's how I will be leading.
Yeah. So we meet every once in a while to
Yes.
pray together, and we got into a discussion, I think, about this at the tail end of one of our sessions.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because DEIB, for people who are Christian people or have a Christian faith basis, these are just biblical values. And for a little while, there was this movement in every corporate organization, even churches, to embrace these things. Like, these are good things. These are good things. And maybe, well, there was this movement toward that thing.
Yes.
And then in the last couple of years, there's a Supreme Court decision, certainly the presidential election. Some of these things have changed, and it's almost like everyone's running away from
Yes.
these things. And I want to distinguish between policy and values.
Yes.
Because even if there's no policy that says DEIB is, or I think still as people of faith, at least,
Yes.
these are core values. I
They're
believe
just core values.
But how do you explain what happened? The build up to where everyone's celebrating DEI, and then this, all of a sudden everyone's like getting out of the DEI. I mean, major corporations have turned publicly on a dime, saying we're going to support this and this and this, and nope, we're done. And and you're like, how do you even, as a CEO or a company, how do you do that and keep face with people to say, yesterday we were saying we value this and this, and today we're going, nope, with no explanation. So you and I were talking a little bit about this, and how do you see, like, what happened? Why was DEI this thing that we were once all embracing?
Yes.
And why do you think it's now something that everyone's going, uh-oh, even though it's a pretty obvious human value?
I know, because sometimes there are things that happen in the community that push us to action. And so it really started with the George Floyd. A lot of organizations won't admit that, but there was this real big push when something very traumatic happened in front of our face, in front of the world, that turned things around. And so a lot of CEOs started to grab onto the fact that, hey, this is the right thing to do. And then ultimately it will be great for our business. I think what ended up happening is because when you look at the DEIB, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I want to make sure that I call the names out. You know, it's not an acronym. This is a real thing here. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That I don't think that they saw the value for their business, because in business, when the deal go down, it's about the bottom line as well. And so when they started to believe that it could make the bottom line better, you know, they were on board for it because they saw this diverse world coming towards them. But then when it started to take a negative turn, they didn't want to be involved in it. But then it's a possibility they could lose money with it because it started becoming about policy. You know, you have people feeling as if, you know, you are not being all inclusive when you start to focus on the underrepresented at an organization. And I think part of it is the uncomfortableness, and they're not willing to go on this journey, not realizing that it really is a journey. It's not going to happen right away. It's not going to happen overnight. And when I first got into this fight, I said that it's a journey. I even said that everyone is not going to be happy about this. But I just don't think that organizations are willing to deal with the 10 people, the 10 people out of thousands of people that has a problem with it. Their voices are louder.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, at organizations. And so I just think that it's a matter of figuring out where you want to commit. And so you may not want to commit with a high level role at the organization, but you will still stay committed to it where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's happening in some organizations, but then there's others. They're doubling down on it and saying that.
Well, Patrick Lencioni, the management consultant, he said, and I don't know if it's original to him, but he said, you know, your core values as an organization are things you're willing to suffer for.
Yes.
So if they're real values, like we put values up on a wall of all the things that we value, he's like, but you can tell a real value. Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to suffer for it? And he consulted with Southwest Airlines forever, which is an interesting case right now because it feels like they're abandoning some core values that they've had forever, but for the sake of profit.
Yes.
But his example of Southwest at the time, under the former CEO, was one of their corporate values was something like fun. And the CEO got a letter from a woman who had flown and was very upset that during the safety presentation, the flight attendant was making jokes and said, you know, I think safety is important and my safety is important and this is not acceptable to me. And you know, unless you change something, I'll never think of flying Southwest again. and because fun or play, I don't know exactly how the value was articulated, was one of their core values.
Yes.
The story goes, the CEO just pulled out a note, wrote her a card and said, "We'll miss you."
That's commitment.
Right? So you go, all right, you know, if fun is a value of ours and you don't like that value and we're going to lose your business, well, it's a value.
Yeah.
We can't lose fun in order to keep a customer.
Yes.
And so as we put that back to the kind of the strange story of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I know it's hard to look into people's hearts as leaders, but what's your read on the situation? Were these values that people were going, yeah, these are deep values, but then it just got too scary or too painful to keep those values? Or do you think it was a game at the beginning and people were just doing it because it was a trending thing? Is it always about chasing profitability, or is it just that it's scary sometimes to suffer for a value?
I think it's all of it, but I do believe that it is scary. It's scary, but then also, again, a lot of times it's going to depend on who the leader is at the top and what they're willing to sacrifice as well. And so I just believe that a lot of things get driven by the external. And then when you start having these organizations and they're like, we're going to pull money from you if you don't take this word down. It's just a play on words. If everybody just settle down and just get calm about this, it's going to be okay. But they're not willing to have to be scrutinized. If you come in and you get a contract and they start looking at what you have on the basis you want to show them that you have this DEI, it's important, but you're not willing to really show the for real change in it. And I just think that, again, it just goes back to, it's a scary thing for organizations. It just is, because they could lose millions because of it as well.
Yeah. So one of the critiques of DEI programs that were happening, and I think part of the reason people are going, this wasn't working, is, there was data that said often, and I don't know the scope or how often, but often when you would have like a sensitivity training or some DEI workshops for your organization, that the aftermath of those things would be that there would be kind of more hostility. There would be less harmony and more hostility. That it almost seemed to drive the opposite, like more resentment or drove some of the negative feelings underground. People suddenly are afraid to say things because they're afraid of getting in trouble. What do you, has that been part of your observation? Or what do you think is going wrong with that?
I just think
what do you
that
think is happening?
Organizations are going to have enough courage to create safe spaces as well. We don't create the safe spaces, it's hard for people to really accept those type of things. And so organizations are going to have to get well at creating safe spaces, because you have all these different characteristics. But when you look at training just in general, that's all training if you think about it. If you start to train on something and people that attend that training, they're going to come back and find out that, oh, that made me uncomfortable. It's this. Or, there's always some type of, so the DEI.
Yeah, you're right. Growth is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Training is uncomfortable.
It is. And so DEI and DEIB or whatever, it wasn't anything different than any other type of training. But those trainings, not to say that they're not important, I started to learn as I kept being in this work, it really is about difference. It's about the difference and recognizing that, and then how it could create distance as well. So difference versus distance. You don't want to create the distance within your organization of people just because of difference. I just believe that the other thing is that the human aspect gets taken out of it. Probably everything, but people take human out of the DEIB conversation. Let's put the human aspect back in it. But for me, being a person of faith, of course, that's how I feel. Yeah. If you're not of that, you can't really grasp that human thing, because when the deal go down, we all are human. We are human beings, and we just need to put the human back in it. Again, I'm happy that you talked about the policies. Take the policy out of it and look at the human aspect of it. And so when you look at the belonging, do you really see that person for real? Do you really? Do you really see them? Do you really hear them? Are you open to really hearing them, giving them an opportunity, a chance? And again, time. A lot of organizations feel they don't just have time to deal with this. It's like, we'll have time. We're going to deal with this over a period. You could talk about a journey all you want to, but right now, I don't see nothing happening. I don't see anything happening. But most change is you don't see it right away.
That's right.
Over a period of time, you'll start to see the culture change over a period of time. But that takes time. Yeah. And a lot of organizations aren't willing to take the time to make that an actual focus.
Yeah. I want to be just honest about some of my own journey. And I think what's difficult about this for me. So here I am, white male.
Yeah.
So I am seen in the eyes of society as being, the person with the most privilege. And certainly, as I move through the world, there's probably some truth to that. Yeah. But as I think about my story growing up, like I came from poverty, I came from, abuse.
Yes.
I came from a, so people may look at me and be like, oh, this is a guy who's always had things going well for him. And it's true that as I move through the world, people don't know that about me necessarily. Yes. And that's never been held against me. But I've had a lot, speaking of the book, I've had a lot to overcome in my life.
Yes.
And so I think for someone like me, I think in the way that the DEI discussion has gone sometimes, it feels like oh, I don't get any credit for overcoming things in my life.
Yes.
There's it feels like there's an assumption that just because I'm a white male, everything's been easy for me. And even if I might even give you that it's been easier for me than for other people.
Yeah.
But please don't assume it's been easy. So I think that's been one of the things that I've had to fight.
Of course.
Even back college admissions and, trying to apply for scholarships and
Yes.
being like, oh, there's not much I exactly qualify for, even though I was valedictorian in my class, had great grades. There was some of that frustration that I felt
I can
of,
appreciate
okay,
that.
do people see that this isn't easy for me and this isn't an easy path for me? So I think that's one side of the like DEI discussion that often doesn't get brought up. And then the other thing, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I've been in discussions with diverse groups of people where I think I've been so afraid to say the wrong thing
Yes.
that I've just kept my mouth shut. And in keeping my mouth shut, I think I've probably kept some unexamined opinions to myself because I was afraid if I said those out loud that everyone was going to turn on me.
Yes.
Rather than going, hey, that's interesting you think that, Dion, but have you thought about this? That we'd have a discussion. I thought like, oh, I'll get canceled, to use that word. Or I think you talk about bringing the humanity back into it. Some moments where I've been too afraid to ask a question that might feel insensitive to get to know you, Pat, in your story. There's something in me that says, oh, don't work too hard to see her, because in doing so, you might say the wrong thing. You might offend her, and offending her would be the worst possible thing. And so I think just like training or growth is uncomfortable, getting to know someone and really seeing someone, it's a vulnerable experience. And when you add in some of the highly charged, especially over the issues of race or things in American culture, I found myself at times just going, I'm just going to shut my mouth. And I realized that shutting my mouth is not actually helpful. But so what would you say to me? Say this to me? Like, what am I supposed to do in those moments, knowing that sometimes people get canceled for saying the wrong thing, even if they're being sincere, and that's probably not helpful for their learning. Anyway, I'll stop answering the question. I'll just ask the question. So what would you say to me? Because I think for white people, white men in particular, I think those are some of the things that keep us from really joining into any experience of true diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I think it keeps us on the outside of it.
Well, and of course that's how you feel. So then you look at a black female, I feel on the outside of it, but you think that it's all about me. You think it's all about me because I'm a woman, because I'm black. Again, creating those safe spaces, because if you put the human back into it, we don't feel uncomfortable getting to know people. And so that's the problem. We're always brought in at these tables, or we're brought into something, and no one takes the time to really get to know, each other or the team, to really get to know what's happening and what's going on. So there go the trust level right there. Yeah. So I feel that you saying that it's more about trust, but unless you share your story, I wouldn't know that unless I share. But see, for me, this is the difference though. For me, that if I don't share my story, there's this assumption about me.
And what's
the assumption is, we have to be very extra careful with her because she's a female and because she's black.
Yeah.
So people come in with those type of assumptions, not realizing that I'm probably one of your more trusted people that's sitting at this table for real. I'm not going to do anything against you. I'm not going to backbite you, but you may have someone else sitting at the table with you that look exactly like you on the exterior. So I think that that's what the world has created. It's all we look at it. We look at things on the exterior, and so I feel like the white male. I keep hearing this about the white male saying
because that is the big story.
Yeah,
right now.
I'm afraid to say anything, or I'm getting cut out of things. Okay, all of that just may be true, but unfortunately, you all are not the underrepresented. You're not. the underrepresented, if you go to the majority of the organizations, the people that are at the table and the people that are making the decisions, they don't look like me.
Yeah.
They don't look like the black male. They don't look like women. You may just have all men sitting at this table. And then when you do bring a woman to the table, she's dismissed, she's overlooked, the whole 9 yards. And it might not even be in a professional situation. It may be because you went to the meeting in your neighborhood or what have you. But when the deal go down, we have just as many stories. But once we get to know each other and we put the human into it, I can get to know you and I can find these things out about you. But again, remember, I worked in that. So I'm a person with more probably compassion, just as much compassion as most people, because that's who I am. That's the field that I've worked in. I have a lot of empathy. I'm in human resources and the whole 9 things. So that may be the way that I am, to take the time to look at that. But when the deal go down, you're not the underrepresented.
Yeah.
Especially in the world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But when I get to know you, I realize that you did come from poverty. But then when they talk about affirmative action, white women benefited more from affirmative action than anyone else. But until you say that and you go and look at that and the data shows that, automatically, what do affirmative action sound to people when they first hear it? It's about black people, you know, black people, you know, they're the ones and so we're paying so much attention to them that now they're not paying attention to me, that type of thing. And you could come, you come from poverty. Yes, there are programs for people in poverty just in general. But again, when it comes to the race thing, we have to fight harder. It's just the bottom line. We have to fight harder. We're not seen as much and the whole 9 yards. But now we are having a conversation, getting to know each other. I get you. You know, we definitely can talk on the basis of what trauma is. But I just feel like a lot of people, but that's you. So, okay, you dealt with poverty. You dealt with some trauma. There are people that look like you, which they've experienced the exact same thing, but when they get success in their lives, they don't go back and pull up the people that have experienced the poverty, the people that have experienced the trauma, because they get on that train of, you know, the white male is just better. Yeah. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and there's definitely some of that oddly going on in the world right now.
And it's oddly going on in the world. And, you know, for me, again, a woman of faith, I just say to everyone, shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you. Shame on you to say that you are committed, or shame on you to just want to put on the front of whatever this commitment is. But my advice is to just really try to get to know people.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get to know people. And when you get to know people and bringing the human aspect back into it, then we could have more of conversations around this.
Yeah, I want to bookmark the safe spaces thing, because I think you're right. And I'd love to hear you talk in a moment more about what does it look like to create safe spaces for conversation.
Yes.
Where I can feel free to also, as the majority person, I can feel comfortable expressing my ignorance or expressing my, things. And to know, like, you may look at me and go, I think you just did that a little bit, to be like, hey, but remember, you're not underrepresented. And that's true. And actually, so that was the other thing I was going to talk about, is that I've got another friend. He's a black male leader here in St. Louis. And when we first got to know each other, I was like, man, this guy, he just seems a little sharp about some of this and a little hostile.
Mm-hmm.
But I really liked him, and I was curious about him. And I would ask some questions, and he would actually, instead of just shutting me down or rolling his eyes at me, he'd give me answers. And I was like, I think I need to learn from this guy. So we sat down a few times. We went out for a drink a couple times. And one of the things he really had to work to get in my mind is, I am seeing a world as a white male where you know, like it feels like my opportunities are diminishing. That yes, there may have been a time in the world where being a white male was the top of the thing, but we're not in those it feels like we're not in those things anymore, that my opportunities are diminishing. And he had to say to me lots of times, he's like, Dion, I really need you to look around in the world and see who's still in charge.
There it is. Open your eyes.
And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't feel like it. And he's like, just look around.
Look around.
And who's still in charge?
Who's in charge?
And that's uncomfortable for me because I'm like, I don't like the way that sounds.
Yeah.
And maybe because I don't like the way it sounds, it was keeping me from seeing that it was true.
Yes.
And I came away from that thinking, okay, things are, especially at the time, this was, before a couple of years ago when there's been this backlash, but I was like, okay, things are changing, but this feeling I have that I'm about to it was a threatening feeling.
That's
I'm about to lose. I'm about to lose.
Threat.
There's not enough, which we can get into a whole scarcity abundance conversation here too. That as people of faith, we're called to live with an abundance mindset. But that scarcity mindset, even for me as a pastor, a man of faith, creeps in and says, the pie is only this big. And if they're telling me my piece is going to get smaller, and then, my son's piece is going to get smaller, how long until we've got nothing left? And that feels threatening.
Yes.
And then even though I value diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, these are faith values of mine, they're deeply held. In the way I live out my life, I start to go, I don't know. I don't want to lose. I don't want to be the one left with no pie.
So there it is right there. You just admitted what most won't admit. It's a threat. Knowing that this world is becoming more diverse. It's a threat. Yeah. It's a threat. Just as simple as that. It's a threat to someone that looks like you because they really do believe or think that their pie is going to get smaller. But just because it looks like on the surface it may get smaller or what have you, when the deal go down, again, we're all human and we are all people. Yeah. What is best for this world is the way in which we should see and do things. And so I believe that you hit it on, being able to talk to white males that are willing to be as honest as you are. It is that we are a threat.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that.
But at the end of the day, like I said a minute ago, the way I see myself is not, I'm a guy who's gotten to a more stable part of life and providing for my family because I'm a white male. I don't see myself that way.
Yeah.
Even though that probably has contributed. The way I see myself is, man, I'm a hardworking guy. I've been an upstanding person.
Of course.
I've treated people well. I've tried to honor God with my life. God has blessed me. And I have to remind myself that if that's true, if that's the story of how I got to where I am right now, which, I'm not flying private jets or anything. I'm not that guy, but like I live a good life, a way better life than I ever thought. And I feel really grateful. My family's got opportunity. Like I'm so grateful for that stuff. But if that story is true, that the way I got here is my hard work, my dedication, then if white males are on the bottom of the totem pole for something, I have to remind myself, but I'm still going to be hardworking and I'm still going to treat people right and I'm still going to honor God. And even in that environment, I still can live a blessed life. Yeah. Like I don't want entitlement for myself.
But that's it though. Treat people right and honor God. Everybody can't do that. And I feel like if you're talking to this thing on entitlement, I mean, people always feel as people, especially of color, you feel entitled. No, I don't. I had to work very hard to get where I'm at as well.
Right, because if issue just entitlement, then every black woman in America is going to be a CEO.
It's not entitlement.
Are they all?
That's right. Yeah. So I had to work very hard. So I have to work hard getting at these tables to try to bring other people up to the table. But when the deal go down, when you talk about But when you have someone that's so stuck on, I had to work very hard to get here. The majority of the people work hard to get where they're at. Right. But when you go and look at the world, as hard as we've worked, where do you see us at? Where are we at? Are we at the table? Yeah, we may be. We may be at the table for a period of time. But when the deal go down and I go in and look at the organization and it's still looking the same as it did 100 years ago, where I don't see, where are the women at? Where are the black women at? And then when you do get at the table and you do start to speak up and try to, really express where you're coming from, then you get punished for that. Because it's not really welcomed. Not really. It's almost this thing like, well, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Because you spoke up. And then what happens to us, we get, believe it or not, they don't realize that they do this to us. We start to shrink. We really won't show up as ourselves after we have that experience. They have a bad experience with you. You've had this bad experience with them, but you keep going on because you know that God is the center of your life and he's going to have you where he wants you to be anyways, right? So it's all of these things that we have to go through in order to be able to be successful. But we work hard, and as hard as we work, as a race, as hard as we work as people with disabilities, as hard as we work with people with different sexual, as hard as we work, where are we at? If you just go in and you just put all of the organizations on the line, where are we at? And why is it harder for us to make it in this world?
Yeah, and I can't obviously speak for everybody who is who are from different faith backgrounds, but I can say as a Christian,
yes,
and as a Christian white male, which Christian comes first because there's no Jew, Greek, slave, or free. But you know, as I think about that, I just go like, I can relax about this stuff.
Yes,
there really is, but there is, and I mean, I grew up in a very diverse school. My best friend in kindergarten is a black woman. She's a doctor now. I couldn't be more proud of her. She's got a beautiful family down in Texas, and like, you know, so as much as I see myself as a person who's always been in environments and friends and with people of color and people of different backgrounds, like I got to acknowledge that the threat feels real.
I am so happy that I finally hear someone actually say that the threat is real. Although the threat is real, it is real because this world is diverse.
Yeah.
And if all of us take all of the people that work at our organizations, you're going to find diversity in that family somewhere. And then shame on you that you go to work and you don't even advocate to make sure that you're having space for your diverse family member coming up behind you and helping them to be able to be successful as well. Why does it have to be so hard? Yeah. It should not have to be so hard. So that's what, you know, that's what doesn't feel good. But I receive you because, again, we are common on the fact of being Christians. We're common on the fact of being leaders. But I'm always going to have to push back on the fact of, when the deal go down.
Yeah.
When the deal go down, there is this pushback and on diversity when it comes to just pretty much anything. People start to look at you a particular way when you walk in the room and you're the only. And it is extremely hard when you are the only that you do show up as one. You come as one, rather, as Maya Angelou say. You come as one and you show up as 10,000. But at some point in there that you showing up as those 10,000, they're going to try to push you down and push you out as well. Those are the things that we have to deal with. And I'm just trying to bring more. Okay, so I come, you're okay, and maybe some okay, some not okay. That I come is that, oh boy, but when I start to pull some others up and they start looking like me or they looking different, they may have these hidden disabilities then you start to get nervous. Mm-hmm. You know, because you only want it to be that one. If I have to deal with that, it's going to just be that one. And that gets frustrating.
Yeah.
After a while, it gets frustrating, and it is not fair. It's as much as people want to talk about fairness, it's not fair.
Yeah.
And we need to step up to the table and do something about it. That's the problem I have.
Yeah. And not only is it not fair, but if you're a leader who cares about the bottom line, every study says that diverse teams perform better, they make better decisions.
Yes.
There's also an interesting study that says, you know, if there's a rule of three, I think, that if you're trying to diversify like a board or a leadership team, having, you know, if it's all white males and you had one person of color or one woman, that person still is pretty they can't do much and they're not heard much. It's not until you get three. So, you think about women, because that's a thing like in leadership that once you get three women on a board, suddenly it's like you become an equal, but it takes at least three, according to the study, to be able to actually you become like, I think they said like a voting block.
Yeah, never going to be equal. But again, that is very true. And a lot of people don't want to believe the fact, it's baloney to them when they hear you say things like when it comes to diversifying or that, okay, we can do that, but we're doing it just to do it. No, you're not going to do it just to do it. And then when you start to want to talk about this thing, merit, everything happens on merit, right? When the deal go down, if you say that I do want to hire a person of color, I believe that you're going to only bring them in if you think that they are qualified anyways. Mm-hmm. And so this thing of merit, you have to do everything on merit. I think that people hold on to that because they're still trying, that thread is there. They're still trying to keep things in the way that they were. Yeah. They don't really want the whole diversity of it takes some companies over 100 years to have women on the executive leadership team. That's wild.
That's surprising, isn't it?
It's wild to me. But my naiveness helped. I feel like I want to make an impact. Yeah. So I don't care. I'll just be one of those people. And then probably I can get they can see me and then we could bring other people. So those are, with my Pat Coleman LLC, those are the type of organizations that I will only become involved with moving forward.
Yeah. So I would love to close up talking about how do we create safe spaces, really? Like there's a lot of conversation about that.
Yeah.
But how do you begin to foster safe spaces? Surely if you're a leader, but even if you're just a person who wants to, if you're a white male or if you're anybody who just wants to create spaces to actually get to the root of some of these issues, misunderstandings, to understand each other, to see the humanness in each other,
yes,
to really live out this diversity, equity, inclusion, and to foster a greater sense of belonging.
Yeah,
that people 100%. Are different. Like,
you just have to be someone that's open and didn't get very good at building relationships. But people don't realize the next thing after building the relationship is nurture the relationship. We don't do enough nurturing in our relationships. And then really, once you nurture that relationship, that's when you can create trust. When you nurture that relationship, that's when people start to feel a little bit more comfortable with you. And you become that safe space. And everybody, no matter how you say it, everybody doesn't feel safe with me. Everyone doesn't feel, now the welcoming thing, I'm going to welcome you. I don't care who you are. I believe that's one of my gifts that God gave me, the welcoming piece. But you may not always trust me or feel safe with me. And so in organizations, they need to allow safe spaces. And then we need to do that in our own lives and just continue to be who you are. Yeah. Number one, I don't think that you have to take any extra steps outside of building true relationships and nurturing them.
Are there any questions that you've found to be helpful or any exercises? The reason I'm asking this question, and it's a bit of a leading question, which I do that a lot. I think, again, seeing the humanness of someone's story, so hearing someone's story, and understanding, not for whatever reason, it's different for me when I hear about what a whole people has been through, like a people group. You think about Black Americans in the United States, and that story is compelling. I remember a good friend of mine from college, Black woman, went to a very white college, small, but she was a Black woman, was in choir with me. We were good friends, and just like a sister.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, and she must have been really frustrated because this was not her way. This was years ago, but it was on Facebook. And she was ranting about how she was at Sam's Club or Costco or something, and it was, the receipt checkout at the door on the way out. And she had just moved to a different part of the state that we were from. and she said, I don't know what it is, but every time I go to this store, they check my receipt 3 times, and I'm watching everybody else just kind of 10 items, check, go out. And for me, they're double counting, they're triple counting, they're checking my receipt 3 times. And I could hear how frustrated she was. And while that for someone else, I might have been like, well, for this woman, I was like, first of all, to know that she's a pretty positive person. And so for her to like feel this frustration and to vent this anger, but also the hurt that she must have felt, to be like, I am an honest person.
Yes, it's hurt.
And she is such an honest person. And so for her to be like, I'm an honest person.
Yes.
And it's hurtful to me that for apparently the only conclusion she could come to is, it must be because I'm a black woman, but I'm an honest person and I'm being treated like I'm dishonest over and over and over again. And that's hurtful. And it's a small example for me, but I remember reading that from her, a woman I knew, a woman who I knew was an honest person, knew she was like, that got to me. And so it was a small thing, but I'm like, okay, this experience that, I've heard other black folk talk about going through the world and being given a hard time, even though that's not, and I don't know that I would treat people that way.
Yes.
And I haven't, like, that's still a really, and so it got to me. So in creating these safe spaces, I guess I'm wondering, are there ways that you know of to create room for us to share our one-on-one stories? I mean, like you do in your book.
Yes.
From people you know and love and trust, and I can acknowledge, my fear, my sense of threat, or the hard things that have happened to me. And like, how do you do that just as friends or
I know.
coworkers?
Yeah. And I just think that you can just put it out there to people. Hey, I want to create this safe space. I want to be able to honestly be open and talk about things that I'm feeling, but I want to hear from you too. You may have to create that. Again, I say create the safe space. And you can say that, and then people will start to join you. And then they'll start to feel like, man, this really was a safe space. I can't necessarily say that social media is a safe space. We know that it's not.
Right.
But at the same time, people can get, that was more, although she didn't need a safe space. She just needed to tell her experience.
Yeah.
I probably would have put the name of the store on there. I would never do anything like that publicly because that's me. But if I was going to do it, I would want people to know what store was treating me in that way. But anyone and any person of color can tell you that those type of things are still happening today. We're not always welcomed. Yeah. We're just not.
And I think that's hard for some of us to believe.
Oh, like but it's the truth.
And I hear you.
And then
like I hear, and I believe you when you say it.
And so
but generally, like when you talk about like society, so like when you, Pat Coleman, say that, I believe you.
It's the truth.
When I hear like societally this message of it's harder to believe, but for some reason when you said I believe you, and then I start to believe it for society.
Oh no,
I'm like, if Pat's telling me that this is her experience, I believe it. So as I think we've had, this is a hard discussion. My hope is that the people who are listening to this and watching this just express a little more openness. And specifically if you happen to be a Christian and you're watching this or you're listening to this, let's just revisit some things as Christians that we're called to. First, like we're called to trust God in all circumstances. So if those things of threat are operating in your life, like we have to surrender those things. We have to lay those things down and to say, God is my provider. He's looking out for me. I don't have to fight my own battles. I don't have to protect. There's no protectionism in Christ. Like I humbly yield everything and I let God provide for me. So I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to protect anything. I don't have to protect my turf.
Yes.
I think as Christians, we always have to be willing to look inside of ourselves and confess and acknowledge where there's sin and darkness in us. And there's always sin and darkness in us, but let the Spirit of God search us out.
Yes.
And really be open to say, Lord, whatever you find in me that's not of you, like I want to know about it. I want to see it, and I want you to help me with it. And so I think on this issue as Christians, like we've got to honestly introspect and notice where, or at least ask God to help us notice where those things of not of Him live inside of us.
There it is.
And where we see that there's injustice or there's wrong, like we're obligated as Christians to try to make it right,
That's the bottom line.
to,
And then
to do what we can to
pray.
restore and to
Yes.
repair. That's what we do. We try to restore
Yes.
and we repair. And I don't know how to do that societally. I have no idea how to do that as a whole society. But Dion as a person, like I've got to start there and figure out how do I do that in my life. And that's every Christian is called to do the same. And then ultimately we're called to, as you said, we're called to see each other and value each other and to love one another because we have been loved.
yes, yes,
deeply.
yes. We have the best example.
Amen. Well, Pat, thank you. Your book, Overcoming, this is available on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Overcoming, living our best life in spite of. Or, the better way to get it is pat@patrcoleman.com if you email me or you go to my website.
And that's patrcoleman.com.
No,
Or no?
It's okay. Let's say the website
Okay.
is patcolemanllc.com.
PatColemanLLC.com.
That'd be the better way to order the book at this time.
Yeah, and you are such a you're such a winsome leader, and anyone who would want to talk to you about whether it's helping them in their organization in anything, or specifically on this issue of on the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging.
Yes.
One of the things I respect about you and value so much is that you're going to walk into a space and you're going to be a positive, constructive, winsome,
Bottom line.
restorative kind of leader. So
That's Pat Coleman.
that's Pat Coleman, and I'm so glad you joined us today. Thanks for joining us, Pat.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yes.
And for all of you who are, again, watching or listening, just gave you some resources on how you can check out Pat's stuff. Also, if you're someone who's on the journey to a whole life and you want to do a little assessing, we have a whole life assessment available for you. That's for free at ippodcast.org. You can check that out. And also, don't forget to check out other episodes. We're building a library here of lots of interesting conversations. So whatever your next conversation is, whether it's with us or with someone else in your life, God bless you and stay in pursuit of wholeness.